All right. So we're gonna hop back in here, try to stay on schedule so we can end this day with a bang. As said, we kind of started with these are the two biggest things that we see in Amazon advertising. So we kind of paired them together and broke them up. So I'm going to bring another one of our account managers up. Are you account manager or account coordinator? Account coordinator for managed services, meaning that Will is actually doing this on a day-to-day basis, and he's going to introduce our next speaker.
Thank you, Jeff. So again, I'm Will Marcotte, I'm account coordinator at Seller Labs. I've had the pleasure of meeting with a few of you, but not everybody. I'll try and meet everybody by the end of the afternoon. That won't happen. While we've gotten a wealth of valuable information from our speakers today, I'm particularly partial to Edward, who just spoke a few moments ago, and to Bret. Bret Darby is an account director with Seller Labs. He previously worked for a top 200 Amazon 3P seller with multiple in-house brands under its parent organization. He's an Aquarius and enjoys long walks on the, sorry, these are the wrong notes. Previous company helped grow from $4 million in revenue to over $42 million last year. So we're very excited to have him on our side. So let's give a big hand to Bret Darby.
Thank you, Will. Appreciate it. Cool. Let me find this clicker. Cool. So show of hands real quick. Who here is running sponsored product campaigns right now? All right, now give me a big smile if you wish you were more profitable. Anyone? Not very many, okay. Normally we get a few more than this. All right, well my name is Bret and I'm here to talk to you guys about optimizing your ad campaigns. And another quick show of hands, who understands what this is a reference to? Anybody drawing that parallel? Got a couple in here. I do, yeah. I was born right before that actually. But in 1989, a movie came out called Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. And for the uninitiated, Bill and Ted travel through time with the help of their companion, Rufus, played by George Carlin, in order to save the future. These two unsuspecting gentlemen, they really look like radicals at the time, are just as pivotal to the future as Plato, Napoleon, or this man. And if you were to meet this man in 1995, I'm sure a lot of you would think he was kind of a madman, kind of a kook, crazy. He probably has a large impact on all of your lives today. And a lot of you are probably here because of Jeff. Well, I'd like to take you guys on a journey today. I'd like to take you through the genesis story of a brand on Amazon. I'd like to show you the beginning, the inception, the growth, and unfortunately I can't show it, but I'd love to show you my future retirement from selling this business, which hopefully will happen soon. I'd like to show you the genesis story of Heisenberg Industrial Scientific Solutions. Now, Ed and I decided we wanted to start a business. We wanted some passive income. We wanted to put ourselves in your guys' shoes. We wanted to understand what it's like to start out at the ground floor and build something from scratch. So we talked about all the possible solutions, what we could actually offer, and we decided on medical grade pharmaceutical manufacturing equipment. It just rings a bell, and it's readily available on Alibaba. So if anyone wants to get into that, let me know. This is actually our first listing. Doesn't look too bad, right? Got our first 4-star review from my mom. And you know, we wanted to start out quick. We wanted to get moving quickly. So we did a lot of keyword research and we threw all these terms in the listing backend. We put them in the search terms. We didn't want them customer facing initially because we wanted to test the theory. We wanted to see if the top terms would bubble up in our search term report and it would give us an idea of how consumers search for this type of product. So that's exactly what we did. We started out with a really simple title, a glass beaker, and the size. And so we ran some ads for a couple weeks, and we saw what came through based on the search term report. And this is the first one we got. There's some common terms in there. There's Erlenmeyer, which is the type of flask that it is. It's not even a beaker. There's narrow mouth. That's the top of that flask. There is borosilicate. There is a number of other terms. There's graduated. And so we decided, let's mine these terms. So I sent this report over to Ed. I filtered out everything that wasn't working, like Hydro Flask there. We didn't even have any sales. Spent 42 bucks on that. And we decided to see, let's visualize this. So we threw it into a word cloud. And then we started looking at it. And we started looking at what shows up most frequently. And you can see Erlenmeyer, graduated, flask, beaker, narrow mouth, separated. And we decided, let's have a conversation about this. Let's figure out which of these we want to actually put in our title. And then let's get them added as PPC targets as well. So I told Ed, I'm going to toss these in our listing. I'm going to put some in the title. I'm going to put some in our manual campaign. And we're going to run ads against these. So threw those in there, Erlenmeyer, narrow mouth flask, and graduation. Ed corrected me, it's actually graduated. For those who don't know the difference, graduated is the markings on the side that tell you how full something is, kind of like in your kitchen. Graduation is when you complete college. So, push the listing live. We were seeing big success right away. We saw a number of increases in impressions. We saw a lot of clicks. And we were certain that eventually those sales were going to come through for us. So we decided to wait a little while, let the ads run. And then Ed sent me this. There's something wrong with our listing. And so I said, okay, let me check it out. Let me figure out what's going on with it. Went and checked the sponsored products related to this item written, and this is what we saw. If you can't see those from up there, those are all graduation flasks. You can get your name and custom engraved on there and give it to your kid when they get done with college so they can start life out right. So after identifying the problem that I had made, I went ahead and reported back to Ed and told him what I found. And I also educated him on a new concept, that it's actually graduated and not graduation. So we both learned a lot from that. And here is the listing in its final state that we are still running PPC against. So I'm sure what a lot of you want to know is, how do we actually identify what terms to use? Surely it wasn't just a word cloud. I mean, that's a great way to visualize that data, but it doesn't tell you how meaningful or how impactful that data is. So to start out, I got to give you guys a couple terms. I think these are really critical that you all understand them and you use them. Feel free and educate your friends as well on these. First one is cadence. This is how frequently you are looking at the data. So whether it be weekly, monthly, once every decade, whatever it is, you need to figure out the cadence with which you're going to look at any data set to run an optimization. Next is thresholds. These are the bars for qualification in your data. So this is going to tell you whether or not you need to take an action. You're probably going to have several. You're going to set these thresholds, and from those thresholds, it's going to tell you whether or not you need to take an action. This is the key components of any software also that's going to make any sort of automated optimizations for you. So cadence and thresholds are often unique to every type of optimization. So you're going to mine a keyword. Obviously, those are probably different than a keyword you're going to negate. That one makes sense. But they also might be unique for different items at different points in their life. So you might need to adjust. And I think Liz actually talked about this earlier a little bit. You might have to tolerate a little bit higher ACoS initially. It's a new product. It's new on market. People are just discovering it. It doesn't have social proof yet. It doesn't have reviews. So you got to give it a little bit of time, and you got to accept that higher ACoS. And you might also realize that maybe during the maturity phase, you start to see that decline, and you can sometimes see that in the PPC as well. You start having a little bit lower ad efficiency. Things don't move quite as well. And so you need to figure out where that key inflection point is so you can exit and make the big money. So how do we identify your ideal cadence? So it really comes down to just looking at different data sets. You know, we personally use Ignite because it allows us to manipulate that time range really easily. So we can set those bars for qualification, we simply change the time, and then we can see how those results populate differently. And that gives us a great insight into what the ideal cadence and the ideal thresholds are for any given account. We also want to find the most frequent time that gives us valuable insights. You know, if you value your time and you're spending an hour finding out that you can save $5, probably not the most impactful use of your time. Lastly, you're going to want to set a calendar reminder and stick to it. So once you've figured out what frequency works best for you, and you're going through there and doing it regularly, just put it in your calendar. Do it first thing in the morning. 5:30 a.m. is generally when I get up. My wife hates it because she has to wake me up every day. I just don't wake up to my alarms, but she wakes me up so that I can start doing this for our clients. It's the time when I work best. Let's look at some examples though. So for keyword harvesting, we want to figure out some good terms. So we want to know what's working for us, what's profitable. We're going to need a couple different bars for qualification or a couple different thresholds. First is going to be 10 clicks or greater. So it can be equal to that. This is just a starting point for you. And you're going to maybe need to tailor this depending upon what populates in your account. Next, we're going to look at impressions. We're going to want to set an impression threshold. So you're going to want to make sure that you have a substantial amount of data to justify taking any action. If you have 15 clicks and 15 impressions, yeah, it looks great on the surface. But is it really a term that's going to be profitable in the long run? Or is it just an easy win for you? We're also going to look at units sold. And I'm looking specifically here at same units sold. Now, it's great if somebody clicks on one of your products and buys something else. It's still a sale for you. But I want to make sure that with my strategy, I'm going as granular as possible. So I've broken out each item into its own ad group so that I can target it specifically, and they might have subtle nuances in those terms, and I'm going to want to be able to tailor each ad group to those subtle nuances. So one might do better for glass beaker, and another might do better for beaker glass. I don't know why people on Amazon search out of order, but they do. Last bar for qualification is going to be a target ACOS, ROAS, ACOP, really whatever you're going to use. You can use a number of conversions, you can use a conversion rate. Pick your flavor. A lot of people focus on ACOS because it's most readily available in Amazon. I prefer to use either ROAS or ACOP. I want to make sure that the percentage of your revenue that's going back into advertising is actually healthy and you're not just cutting away at your margin. So this is what it looks like when I pull up these results with our data set. So you can see we got rid of Hydro Flask, we got rid of the terms that weren't working by adding these filters. This is just a straight export out of Ignite. Just pulled it into Excel so that I could get an easier screenshot. Now that I have it here, I'm looking at a couple specific terms. So I'm seeing that those same terms that we saw earlier are the ones that are still doing good. Erlenmeyer Flask. You can see some that aren't doing quite as well. 1,000 milliliter, a little bit higher ACOS. Now, we've looked at it in 30 days and we've seen some results. What we choose to do is we choose to validate that data across time. We want to make sure that what we're seeing in 30 days is similar to what we're seeing in 60 days or 90 days. Pick your time period. It can be 2 weeks over 2 weeks. It can be a month over a month. It can be a much larger time period. So we use very similar thresholds, but we do have to tailor them a little bit more. So you're going to want to increase these numbers slightly. You can see we jump up to 20 clicks, 2,500 impressions, 5 same units sold, and a target ACOS that is still equal to or less than our goal. And lastly, this is an optional one. Toss in a conversion rate filter. If you're seeing too big of a data set, throw that in there and that's going to trim it down for you. Now, you might need to adjust these based on the particular vertical you're in. If you're selling supplements, it's going to be far different than apparel. I've worked in both of those and they do have different nuances to their data. And so you're going to need to customize these for whatever category you're in. I'm suspecting that a lot of you are private label. Yeah? Okay. Cool. So are numbers enough? No, absolutely not. You have to spot check the data. So you're pulling terms from your keyword report. You're going to put them in as a manual target. You want to make sure they're working for you. We found this one. I threw it in there just to mess with them. I wanted to see if Ed would notice. So we did spend $4 on Cracker Barrel chairs. If you guys have ever been to a Cracker Barrel, they have Adirondack chairs out front. Love them. I want to get a set, but threw this in there to see if we could show up, and we did. So we have to spot check and make sure that that's actually something we want to go after. As you can also see, the ACOS looks pretty good. On the surface, this looks like something I'd want to go after. That click-through rate is phenomenal. That cost per click is really great. But it's just an anomaly in a couple test orders I purchased. So, after a few months, Ed and I started seeing some growth. We started expanding our catalog. Distillation flask, it is not a bong. A boiling flask, Amazon's choice even for Florence flask, that's cool. Got the cell culture flask. We even got sets. We got multi-packs. Wanted to see how all of these would do. But we ran into a roadblock. Has anyone ever experienced this problem? Cash flow is not good. You don't actually have the money to run ads against all of your products. Raise your hand if you have. I know I have. A couple hands. Nobody really wants to put their hand up for that. All right. Well, we ran into this problem, and we decided to talk, how do we free up some funds? How do we make sure we have enough money to continue operating, as well as we can? So, went back to this great search term report. Went and looked for those easy wins. Hydro Flask. It's clear, it doesn't work. Flask. Bigger search volume, a lot of spend, but we weren't converting. People probably, again, looking for something to drink some whiskey out of. So, once again, we go back to the drawing board. We figure out the cadence, we figure out our thresholds. With keyword negation cadence, weekly is best for a campaign that's immature, less than 3 months old. Once you've been running it for a little while, you've already performed a lot of the optimizations. Unless you're frequently changing your listing, you don't need to increase that frequency quite as often. Once it matures, you can cut back a little bit. And depending upon how large of a market your products are aiming after, you might need to do this more frequently or less frequently. And again, last, niche products. If you have something where there's only 8 or 9 people in the world that want it, probably don't need to do this too often. There's probably not a lot of people discovering it. Let's look at thresholds. So first I got to get into a couple caveats. With keyword negation, you have to understand what you're doing. You're cutting these terms out. You're saying, I don't want to go against this no matter what. Likely you might be doing it in your auto campaigns. You might be doing it in sponsored brand as well. Depending upon how you choose to optimize those, sometimes you mirror it across, spread it across all of them. Sometimes you just hit a single campaign. But there's a couple problems that can come from that. First, you're going to have to follow a schedule and make sure you review it regularly. You're going to want to review every term manually. Just a quick spot check. You don't need to spend a ton of time reading into it and searching it unless you're uncertain about it yourself. Maybe there is some validity to targeting that in the future. Maybe you're just not as relevant right now. Last, check for your brand name. I've done this, and I'm sure somebody in this room has as well. You get in that optimization mode. You're just funneling data through. You're saving yourself some money, and quickly you've just blacklisted your own brand name. You're no longer relevant. So, keyword negation thresholds. Get all these up here. Greater than or equal to 15 clicks. Less than or equal to 1 same unit sold. Ideally none. And greater than or equal to your target ACOS. So essentially you're spending too much on it. You're not profitable for that term. Doesn't make sense to go after it. You have a substantial number of clicks. And if anyone wants to do a deep dive later with me, we can talk more about how to actually tailor this to your particular strategy. There are subtle nuances depending upon how you have your campaign structured. But this kind of a blanket answer for this would be 15 clicks. And then that same unit sold, again, we're looking for something. It might be selling a ton of units for a different item in your catalog. But if it's not achieving the results for the item that you're actually trying to advertise, it might not be the best term for you. Maybe move it into the campaign with that item that it is selling for. Last, some easy wins. Look for anything with over 15 clicks, $5 in spend, and no sales. If you do that right now, I'm sure a lot of you could save some money. So this is what we pulled up in our account. You see a lot of terms that are high ACOS. Science classroom supplies, it's pretty generalized. It's a category search. It's not really looking for anything in particular. So running top of search ads on that doesn't really make sense. And where we were getting placements when we looked at our placement report also didn't really make sense. Science flask beaker, same thing. Flasks, actually performing a little bit better. And the one down here at the bottom that I want to pay attention to, Heisenberg Scientific Flasks. So somebody was actually searching for our brand. Didn't perform too well for this item, but it did perform better for other items. So it was important that we did identify this and cut it out in that campaign, but we also had to first pay attention to the fact that we were negating our own brand. Now, I'm sure a lot of you guys remember this from earlier. Hasn't been too long. So we were seeing some decline in our traffic. We were thinking, okay, maybe we're hitting a decline phase. Maybe this product is just peaked. It's done. So we had to validate that. Hopefully most of you already know how to do this. If not, you might have to talk to me later about this. We went and checked our child item report, pulled up our business reports, we checked the session data, we checked the page view data, we checked the conversion data to validate this and make sure that we were seeing an actual decline and that it wasn't just some seasonality terms. We actually also went into brand analytics. We checked those search terms to see where they were ranking in terms of search frequency on Amazon and who owned the click share for those 3 top sales. This is really small. I'm sorry, I can't even read that really. These are our ASINs. These are the products. And the column I want you to pay attention to here is this session column. It's the first one with data there. And if you'll notice that second one from the bottom, we're looking at a 30-day view and we only had 8 sessions. It had 10 page views. So really only 8 people actually interested in this product. It's a traffic problem. Very clear to see. Now if that had said 2,000, if that had even said 300, we might have had to look through a different lens, but it was clear to identify that this did have low traffic and we needed to do something with our bids. We needed to make some adjustments. We needed to really boost it and push it in the right direction. So we went through to identify our bid adjustment cadence. Weekly is usually ideal. If you're touching it more often than that, hopefully you have a good reason for it. We also applied some dynamic bidding and some bid adjustments. Now we're very conservative with our application of these. We don't want to just go throwing 900% in there. I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen all these strategies that people are writing about online. They're not really validated. They're not really tested. They're just somebody's best guess. So we choose between about 10 and 20%. I feel like that's a safe spot for us. Applied it to these campaigns so we could be a little bit more aggressive in those placements that were converting best. So we went and looked at our placement report. We identified that we were doing best at top of search, but we know there's a lower search volume. So we just had to apply it as a blanket to both product detail pages and to top of search. So we applied 25% to top of search and we applied 10% to product detail pages. Gave us a little bit more of a competitive edge. But we also had to adjust our bids. So this is going to be highly dependent upon your campaign architecture. So if you've got a campaign with a lot of items in a single ad group, this is probably going to be a little bit different than if you have everything broken out one by one. So the first thing you need to understand about adjusting your bids is it's really the same no matter where you go. Whether you're using somebody that has automated bidding software that's going to calculate your ideal bid, or you're using somebody that's just adjusting it, it's really pretty much the same. You're working off a goal, and you're figuring out how far you deviate from that goal, and you're moving it towards that. So if you're below your target ACOS or ACOP or whatever goal you set, you increase it. If you're above it, you have 100% ACOS and you want to be at 50, you're going to want to decrease that bid. And it really is that simple. If you look at all the automated solutions, most all of them use something very similar to this. There might be little nuances there, but it's very similar. And these are the ones that I recommend you guys start with, test on your own account. Standard adjustments. So 10% up. You see that you're not moving in the right direction, adjust it by 10% for an auto campaign. Now you see that you're looking at your manual campaign, you can maybe bump that up to 15%. Be a little bit more aggressive, boost it a little bit more. In theory, unless you just went to Google and downloaded a report of all the keywords that might match your demographic or something, you've validated these terms. You've seen the history of them working well in their auto campaigns, so you've moved them over for some reason. And hopefully you validated them over several periods so that you can understand that they work consistently for you. Now, if you're really in a pinch and you need to get going a little bit further, I would recommend these thresholds. So you move it by 30% for an auto bid, up to 50% for a keyword that you validated. Again, I should have put in a disclaimer saying you validated it, because I see it too often where people just download some Google data and then they bid aggressively against it and they say, where are my sales? Why are they not working? So, and that's really all I have for you guys. Making more time for questions.
side-by-side report so you can track the trends?
I don't in my deck, but yeah, generally I'd pull them up side by side.
But you don't have one report that can do comparisons for you?
We do
need to repeat the question, please.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So he's asking, do we have a report that allows you to do that side-by-side comparison? So we don't have a report that does the side-by-side comparison just yet, but what we do is either download it out of Ignite. So you'll download 30 days, go back to the previous 30-day period, download that as well. Or you can actually just look in Ignite, just validate it. Narrow it down to whatever specific filter you're looking through, and then see how that data changes.
Well, we've got time. Let's do like one or two more questions.
I wanted to ask about the brand checks that you did in terms of validating it with the growth from the category versus what you're growing in your specific ASIN.
Yeah, can you be more specific about
Like what tools are you using to do that?
Ignite, Scope?
Okay.
Yeah, pretty much. We do use brand analytics from Amazon. I hope everyone, raise your hands if you know what brand analytics are even. Okay, good. I was hoping so. So brand analytics is something that Amazon's offering. It's basically a permutation of ARA premium analytics from the vendor side. You guys saw some text earlier about that. Basically, they piped over some of that data to share it with sellers. And so you can access it in your Seller Central account if you're brand registered. And it basically allows you to check search volumes over time. So you can go check if your brand is ranking in there and it has a high enough frequency, you can just map it out over time and determine where your peaks are and where your valleys are. And then you'll also go look at category terms in there, and you can also do the same thing with those.
And the answer to the next question is no. Seller Labs is not building that into our tools as of right now from brand analytics perspective. Actually, if you look at the brand analytics information, right across the top of it, it specifically says this information is not for use within outside applications.
Yep.
So Amazon is being very protective of that data and tools that are they're restricting tools from using that data as of right now.
Yeah.
Although we hope that will change.
They're going to charge for it.
Yeah, they might. Yeah, we'll see what they end up doing. But I know that question has come up a few times. One more question. Anyone? Yeah, up there.
So recently, some of the people I've talked to said instead of pausing keywords or adding them to the negative keywords, they extremely lower the bid.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
I would prefer to cut it out if it's just not working. So I'm looking for clear signs of distinction. If it's something where it's a gray area and it's had mediocre performance over time, I'll still try to make it work. So I'll adjust that bid. That's in the scope of a manual campaign. So again, I've validated those words. I do believe that they are going to work or they have worked previously. So I'm going to give them a little bit more of a push. If it's in an auto campaign, I'm fine with cutting it out because I'd prefer to just iterate in the future and just go back and revalidate those terms if I have to. Yeah, no problem.
All right, so I told this story earlier, but I claim Bret.
Yep.
I actually called Bret to sell him Ignite Plus, and the phone call ended, and then we hired Bret. He came to me. I didn't steal him, but Bret was leaving his company. He was looking for something new, and then we actually took that client on as a managed service client. So it was like a win all around.
Huge win. Yeah.
So you guys can tell why I was so excited to bring him onto the team. He brings an amazing wealth of knowledge. So if you have Amazon PPC questions, use today and tomorrow to sit down with Edward, sit down with Bret, sit down with other people on our team, and get them answered. That's what you guys are here for, is to walk away with that knowledge. So thank you, Bret.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all.